December 1944, the Ardennes forest. An American armored infantry column grinds to a halt. The obstacle is not a Tiger tank or a hidden anti-tank gun. It is a single, two-story stone farmhouse. From its reinforced windows, German machine guns command the entire snow-covered road, pinning down the advance. For the company commander, the situation is critical. Mortars are useless against the fixed slate roof. His own machine guns cannot penetrate the stone walls. With casualties mounting and the entire flank exposed, the offensive is frozen. A frontal assault is suicide. His standard tools have failed. He scans the stalled column of vehicles, searching for an answer. His eyes land on an unlikely vehicle, the M16 multiple-gun motor carriage. A lightly armored half-track mounting 4 heavy machine guns, designed for one purpose, to watch the skies and protect the column from the Luftwaffe. This is the story of how that weapon, a shield against air attack, was about to be reforged into a sword. The central question is stark. Could a machine designed for the sky break a bloody stalemate on the ground? And what were the unintended consequences of this desperate improvisation? To understand the commander's desperate idea, you have to understand the machine he was looking at. The M16 was not simply 4 machine guns bolted onto a half-track. It was a sophisticated, purpose-built weapon system. Its heart was the M45 Maxim turret, an electrically powered mount that was revolutionary for its time. Fed by its own gasoline generator, the turret could rotate 360 degrees and elevate its guns almost vertically with uncanny speed and smoothness. This allowed a single gunner, using simple joystick-like controls, to track and engage even the fastest, low-flying aircraft. Its armament was formidable. 4 heavy M2 Browning .50 caliber machine guns, synchronized to fire together. This gave the M16 a combined rate of fire of over 2,000 rounds per minute, earning it the grim nickname, the Meat Chopper. With a standard load of 5,000 rounds in massive ammunition boxes, it could sustain this overwhelming fire for minutes at a time. The entire system was engineered for one mission, protecting advancing columns from the German Air Force. It was the definitive American answer to the Stuka dive bombers and Focke-Wulf fighters that had terrorized Allied forces earlier in the war. But by late 1944, the M16 had become a victim of its own side's success. Allied air superiority over the Western Front was so total that the Luftwaffe was a rare sight. The skies over France and Belgium were American and British territory. And so, the highly trained crews of these powerful anti-aircraft batteries spent their days scanning empty horizons. They were a resource of immense, mobile firepower, guarding the column against a ghost. On the front line, infantry companies were being pinned down and decimated by well-defended German positions, and just behind them, these rolling fortresses sat idle. It was only a matter of time before a commander, pushed to the breaking point, decided to connect the two. That moment arrived on a frozen road in the Ardennes. The order came down the line, not to the mortar teams or the riflemen, but to the crew of the M16 idling near the rear. Move your vehicle to the head of the column. For the crew, it was a bizarre command. Their job was to watch the sky, to stay protected within the formation, not to lead an assault. But orders were orders. The half-track rumbled forward, its steel tracks churning through the snow, past the pinned-down infantry taking cover in the ditches. It came to a stop, directly in the line of sight of the farmhouse. In the turret, the gunner took his position. His training was for tracking fast-moving targets against an open sky. Now, his target was a dark window in a stone wall. He engaged the electric motors. Instead of a swift, high-angle traverse, the 4 heavy barrels began a slow, deliberate descent, a movement they were never designed to make. The gunner centered the sights on the stone building. He placed his thumbs on the twin butterfly triggers. The entire column held its breath. The radio crackled again. The order was simple. Fire. The sound was not the familiar staccato of a machine gun. It was a physical concussion, a deafening, high-frequency roar that ripped the winter air apart. 4 streams of .50 caliber tracer rounds, glowing red in the dim light, converged on the farmhouse. They didn't just pepper the wall, they struck it like a jackhammer. The half-inch thick steel core projectiles, each carrying over 13,000 foot-pounds of energy, pulverized the stone facade. Slate shingles exploded into dust. Wooden window frames were ripped from their moorings and vanished into the interior. Within seconds, the upper floor of the farmhouse was no longer a fortified position. It was a cloud of debris. The German MG-42 fell silent. Not because its crew was necessarily hit, but because the very structure they were hiding in was being physically disassembled around them. For the pinned-down GIs in the snow, the psychological shock was as potent as the physical destruction. They were witnessing a new kind of violence. Word of this success spread with the speed of a battlefield rumor. passed from one company to the next, not through official orders, but through radio chatter and exhausted debriefs. The improvisation wasn't doctrine, it was survival. Along the frozen roads of the Ardennes, a new tactic was born. M16s were quietly moved from their traditional anti-aircraft positions in the middle or rear of a column and repositioned near the front. Platoon leaders began using them for reconnaissance by fire, spraying a suspicious-looking tree line or a quiet village crossroads with a short burst. The goal wasn't to destroy a specific target, but to provoke a reaction, to force a hidden enemy to reveal their position by returning fire. For infantry squads tasked with advancing across open ground, the M16 became their most trusted asset. Its overwhelming fire could suppress multiple enemy positions simultaneously, allowing the riflemen to move up. The GIS gave it their own names, born of grim respect, the Krautmauer and the infamous Meat Chopper. From the German perspective, this was a terrifying new development. A Lancer, dug into a well-prepared position, confident that his cover could withstand rifle fire and grenades, would suddenly face something entirely different. Veterans later described hearing a sound like a giant buzzsaw before their world erupted. They didn't know what it was at first, only that it wasn't a tank, and it wasn't a standard machine gun. Log breastworks that could stop a .30 caliber round were shredded into splinters. Sandbags burst open, their contents vaporized. The sheer volume of fire made it impossible to peek out, to aim, to do anything but press oneself into the frozen earth and pray. German after-action reports from the Ardennes began to specifically mention the Vierling, or quad mount. Field commanders learned to identify the M16 half-track by its silhouette and mark it as a priority target for their own anti-tank guns and Panzerfaust teams. It was a threat that had to be eliminated on sight. This newfound power led to confidence, and confidence soon bled into overconfidence. American units began to employ the M16s with increasing aggression, pushing the machine far beyond its intended role. In the brutal house-to-house fighting for Belgian towns, an M16 would be brought up to an intersection, its gunner using the powered Maxim turret to methodically hose down every window and door on a block before the infantry moved in. It was acting as an improvised assault gun, a street-clearing weapon of unparalleled efficiency. For a moment, it seemed like the perfect answer to the dug-in, fanatical defense the Germans were mounting. The anti-aircraft gun had proven it could dominate infantry in the open and shatter fortified buildings. But the battlefields of the Ardennes held far more dangerous enemies than riflemen in a farmhouse. The M16 was a lightly armored half-track, its crew exposed in an open-top turret. What would happen when this improvised infantry killer ran into the very enemy its own side's tanks were struggling to defeat? In the chaotic advance near the Belgian town of Stoumont, that question was answered. Emboldened by its successes, the crew of an M16 pushed aggressively around a blind corner, ready to clear the street ahead. What they found was not another machine gun nest. It was a Panzer IV, sitting idle 60 yards away. The M16's gunner reacted instantly, unleashing the full fury of the quad mount. But the .50 caliber rounds that had pulverized stone walls now simply sparked and whined off the tank's thick, sloped armor, ricocheting uselessly into the sky. Slowly, almost contemptuously, the Panzer's turret began to traverse. For the crew, the horrifying truth dawned. Their ultimate weapon was useless. Their thin armor offered no protection. A single flash from the tank's 75mm gun, and the M16 was gone. The lesson learned from the Panzer at Stoumont was simple and brutal. Now, facing a vital crossroads defended by multiple machine gun nests and at least one hidden anti-tank gun, the Americans had a new plan. This time, the M16 was not sent in as a lone wolf. It was carefully maneuvered behind the crest of a low hill, its 4 barrels barely clearing the frozen earth. On command, the Meat Chopper opened fire. This was not a probing burst. It was a sustained, 10-second hurricane of steel aimed at the German positions. The sheer volume of fire was absolute. It didn't just suppress the enemy machine guns, it physically dismantled their cover, pinning the crews in the storm of splinters and dirt. Under this protective canopy of tracers, the American infantry charged across the open ground and overwhelmed the nests. The tactic was a stunning success. The crossroads was taken. But the fight wasn't over. To support the next push, the M16 had to reposition. The driver engaged the gears, and the half-track lurched forward, climbing over the ridge and into the open. It was exposed for less than 10 seconds. For the patient crew of a hidden Pak-40, it was all they needed. A single, sharp crack echoed across the field. The 75mm armor-piercing round hit the M16's front plate. The impact was followed a split second later by a catastrophic secondary blast, as the vehicle's fuel and thousands of .50 caliber rounds cooked off in a single, roaring fireball. So we returned to the frozen road and the farmhouse that stopped an army. The M16 did break that stalemate, but its story is not a simple tale of a wonder weapon. It is a lesson in the brutal calculus of battlefield adaptation. The meat chopper was a flawed, vulnerable machine, a death trap when facing tanks or anti-tank guns. Yet for a brief, specific moment, aimed at the right target, it was unstoppable. Its legacy in the Ardennes is a testament not to superior engineering, but to the desperate creativity born of necessity, how soldiers under fire are forced to turn shields into swords, and how the line between a brilliant tactic and a fatal error is often measured in seconds. The weapon designed to watch the skies taught a brutal lesson on the ground. In war, the most effective tool is not always the one you were given, but the one you dare to use differently.